The hammer struck hot iron with a rhythm Eleanor Hayes knew by heart. Sparks scattered across the darkened forge brief stars that died against stone walls. The scent of burning coal mixed with her own sweat, creating a familiar perfume that had clung to her skin and hair for decades. 56 years of existence, and this forge remained the only place she truly felt at peace. Outside, the autumn wind howled through Silver Oak's narrow streets. The sun had set hours ago, but Eleanor remained at her work. Better here than the cold room Alpha Redwood provided at the edge of pack territory. Better the company of fire and metal than the pitying stares of wolves who saw her as broken. She plunged the horseshoe into water. Steam hissed, angry and violent. "Still here, Omega." Thomas, the blacksmith's apprentice, poked his head through the doorway. His expression held no malice, only curiosity. Humans didn't understand the shame that came with being a wolf who couldn't quite measure up. "Finishing Master Gerard's order," Eleanor replied, setting the cooled shoe aside. Her hands were steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. "You should get home before the moon rises fully." Thomas glanced at the darkening sky visible through the high windows. "You're not worried?" "It's a new moon," Eleanor said without emotion. "They say rogues get bold when there's no light to hunt by." She almost laughed. Rogues weren't the danger. Not to her. William Redwood had made certain everyone knew Eleanor Hayes was pack property, even if she spent her days among humans. Even if her wolf was so weak she barely registered on another shifter's senses. "I'll be fine," she said. Thomas left with a wave. The forge fell silent except for the crackling fire. Eleanor worked for another hour, losing herself in the song only she could hear. The metal sang when she touched it, a vibration that traveled from her palms to her chest. It had been that way since childhood, a secret she kept buried deep because difference meant danger in Alpha Redwood's territory. The last piece cooled. She banked the forge fire and gathered her threadbare cloak. The walk back to Packlands took half an hour through forests that bordered the neutral territory. Eleanor kept her head down and her steps quick. The unearthly howl stopped her cold. It came from deep within the forbidden woods, the stretch of wilderness that belonged to no pack. A place where shifters went to or to hide. The sound tore through the night again, raw with agony, and something in Eleanor's chest twisted painfully. She should keep walking, return to her small room and pretend she heard nothing. Her feet turned toward the forest. The underbrush grabbed at her cloak and scratched her exposed hands. Eleanor pushed deeper, following a pull she didn't understand. The howls had stopped, but now she heard something worse. Labored breathing. The wet sound of blood hitting earth. Moonlight filtered through bare branches, illuminating a scene from nightmares. A massive black wolf lay collapsed against an ancient oak. Silver chains wrapped around his body, pinning him to the trunk. The metal gleamed with runes that hurt to look at directly. Symbols that spoke of old magic and older hatred. Where the chains touched furs, how the flesh burned. Smoke rose from wounds that should have healed instantly on any shifter. The wolf's eyes opened. Blue, not amber or gold, like most of their kind, but pure ice blue that caught the faint light and reflected it back. Those eyes fixed on Eleanor with an intelligence that made her breath catch. He was dying. She should run, should call for Alpha Redwood, should do anything except move closer to a strange wolf bound by magic she didn't understand. Eleanor knelt beside him. "Easy," she whispered, though she didn't know if he could understand in this form. "I'm going to help." The wolf made a sound between a growl and a whimper. Warning or permission, she couldn't tell. Her hands hovered over the chains. Heat radiated from the silver, making her fingers tingle. But beneath that heat, she felt something else. A resonance. The same singing sensation she experienced with every piece of metal in her forge. The chains were calling to her. Eleanor closed her eyes and let instinct guide her. She pressed her palms against the silver, ignoring the burn. The song grew louder, clearer. She could feel the structure of the metal, the way it had been forged and twisted and imbued with power meant to hold and hurt. But metal answered to her will in ways she'd never understood. She thought of breaking a freedom of chains that served no purpose but cruelty. The silver cracked. The wolf's breathing changed, becoming steadier. Encouraged, Eleanor focused harder. The singing in her mind became almost deafening, a chorus demanding release. She gave it everything she had. The chains shattered. "Who are you?" The deep voice startled Eleanor. She stumbled back, eyes wide. Where the wolf had been now stood a man, Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. His face was all hard angles, prominent cheekbones, and a strong jaw darkened by stubble. Those ice-blue eyes studied her with the same intensity they had in wolf form. He was completely naked. Heat flooded Eleanor's face as she quickly averted her gaze, but not before noticing the scars that marked his muscular chest. Three parallel lines that spoke of old battles. "Who are you?" he asked again, his voice rough from disuse or pain. Before she could answer, a twig snapped in the darkness. They both froze. "We need to move," an elderly voice commanded. "Now." From the shadows emerged a figure Eleanor had seen occasionally in Silver Oak, but had never spoken to. An old man with a silver beard that reached his chest, wearing simple clothes that belied the power she sensed radiating from him. Abel Greywood, the hermit who lived deep in the neutral territory. "Abel," the naked man acknowledged with a nod, "your timing is impeccable." "And yours is terrible, Matthew," Abel replied tersely. "Redwood scouts patrol these woods. We need to get you both to safety." Eleanor found her voice at last. "I'm not going anywhere with strangers." The older man's eyes softened as he regarded her. "You just freed an alpha from silver chains with your bare hands, Eleanor Hayes. I believe introductions are long overdue." She startled at the use of her name. "How do you know who I am?" "I know many things," Abel said cryptically, "including that those who imprisoned Matthew will return when they realize the chains have been broken." He gestured toward the forest depths. "My home isn't far. You'll both be safe there." Eleanor hesitated. Her instincts urged caution, but something deeper pulled her toward these strangers. The naked man Matthew watched her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "Because right now, neither of us has a better option," Matthew said, wincing as he took a step forward. His wound still smoked faintly where the silver had burned him. A howl split the night closer this time, different from Matthew's pain-filled cry. This was a hunting call. "Choose quickly," Abel said. Eleanor made her decision. "Lead the way." Abel's home was not what Eleanor expected. From the outside, it appeared to be a simple hut nestled between ancient trees. Inside it opened into a spacious dwelling filled with books, strange artifacts, and an array of metalworking tools that made her forge look primitive by comparison. "Sit," Abel instructed Matthew, pointing to a chair near the hearth. To Eleanor, he handed a bowl of salve. "For his burns. Silver poisoning needs immediate treatment." While Abel busied himself gathering supplies, Eleanor approached Matthew, who now wore loose trousers Abel had provided. His chest remained bare, revealing the full extent of his injuries. The burn marks formed intricate patterns where the chains had pressed against his skin. "This will sting," she warned, scooping some of the salve onto her fingers. "I've endured worse," Matthew replied, his blue eyes never leaving her face. As her fingers made contact with his skin, something extraordinary happened. A jolt of energy passed between them like static, but warmer, more persistent. Their eyes met in shared surprise. "What was that?" Eleanor whispered. Abel paused in his work, watching them with knowing eyes. "The mate bond rarely manifests at our age," he said. "But when it does, it's undeniable." "Mate bond," Eleanor echoed, pulling her hand back, as if burned. "That's impossible." Matthew's expression hardened. "I've had one political mating in my lifetime. I have no interest in another." "This isn't political," Abel said, setting down a stack of books. "This is fate recognizing compatibility of souls, regardless of age or circumstance." Eleanor shook her head. "I'm an Omega, barely a wolf at all according to most, and I'm 56 years old. Mate bonds don't happen to women like me." A small smile played at the corners of Matthew's mouth. "And they don't happen twice to men like me. Yet here we are." Abel cleared his throat. "While you two process this development, perhaps introductions are in order." He gestured to Matthew. "This is Matthew Silvercrest, Alpha King of the North American Alliance." Eleanor's eyes widened. Everyone knew the Silvercrest name, the most powerful werewolf bloodline on the continent. "And you," Abel continued, turning to Eleanor, "are far more than the Omega blacksmith William Redwood has convinced you to be." Matthew leaned forward, wincing slightly at the movement. "You control the silver chains." "No ordinary wolf could do that." "I didn't control anything," Eleanor said defensively. I don't know, felt them, the way they were made, the way they could break." "You're a songsmith," Abel said simply. The term meant nothing to Eleanor, but Matthew reacted as if struck. "That's not possible," he said, his voice tight. "Songsmiths were hunted to extinction decades ago." "Clearly not," Abel replied, gesturing to Eleanor. "What is a songsmith?" she demanded. Abel sat heavily in a chair across from them. "A rare bloodline of wolves with the ability to hear metal sing, to understand its structure, to shape it with will as much as hammer. Metalworkers of extraordinary ability capable of forging weapons that could kill even the most powerful alphas permanently. Which is why my father ordered their extinction," Matthew added grimly. The revelation hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "Your father," she repeated. "Theodore Silvercrest ordered the death of these songsmiths." Matthew nodded, his expression grim. "It was before my time, but yes, about 30 years ago." 30 years. Around the same time Eleanor's mother had died under mysterious circumstances. The same mother who had taught her to listen to the metal, to feel its song, before making her promise never to tell anyone about their special connection to the forge. "Why would he do that?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely audible. "Fear," Abel answered. "Songsmiths were the only wolves who could create weapons capable of killing alphas permanently. No healing, no second chances. Theodore couldn't stand the thought of such power existing beyond his control." Matthew's jaw tightened. "My father had many flaws, his paranoia chief among them." Eleanor stood abruptly, putting distance between herself and Matthew. "So I should just accept that I'm magically bound to the son of the man who likely ordered my mother's death." "The mate bond doesn't care about the sins of our fathers," Abel said softly, "and Matthew is not Theodore." "You don't know what happened to my mother," Eleanor argued. "No," Abel agreed, "but I know what happened to many songsmiths. I helped some escape. Not enough." A knock at the door silenced them all. Abel raised a finger to his lips, then moved silently to a small window. After peering out, his posture relaxed. "It's Lucas," he informed them, opening the door. The man who entered was younger than Matthew, but clearly a warrior. His alert eyes scanned the room, widening when they fell on Matthew. "My king," he breathed, "you're alive." "No thanks to Damien," Matthew replied bitterly. Lucas dropped to one knee briefly before rising. "Damien has declared you dead. He's mobilizing support among the packs, claiming interim leadership of the Alliance." "How long have I been missing?" Matthew asked. 3 days, Lucas replied. "They wrapped you in those chains after the ambush. Everyone believed no wolf could survive that long." "And my sister," Lucas's expression darkened. "Cassandra is being held at the castle. Damien is pushing for a blood bond ritual in 2 days' time. Says it will stabilize the Alliance in your absence." Matthew surged to his feet, then swayed dangerously. Eleanor moved to his side, instinctively supporting his weight. "You're still weak from silver poisoning," she chided. "My sister needs me," he growled. "Your sister needs you alive," Eleanor countered. "The silver is still in your system." Lucas glanced between them, noting their proximity with raised eyebrows. "Who is this Eleanor Hayes?" Abel answered. "A songsmith who freed your king from Damien's trap." Lucas's hand moved to the hilt of his sword. "Songsmiths are extinct." "Evidently not," Matthew said, "and she's under my protection." The younger man relaxed slightly, but his suspicious gaze remained fixed on Eleanor. "There's more," Lucas said after a moment. "Your grandson, Lucas." Matthew went rigid beside Eleanor. "What about him?" "Damien has him too. The boy is being kept separate from Cassandra. I believe Damien intends to use him in the ritual, rather than your sister." Eleanor felt Matthew's despair through the strange new connection between them. The mate bond carried emotions she had no context for, yet understood perfectly. "Lucas is 10 years old," Matthew said, his voice hollow. "He's just a child. A child of royal blood," Lucas pointed out grimly, "perfect for a blood bond ritual." "What exactly is this ritual?" Eleanor asked. Abel was the one who answered. "An ancient dark magic. It requires royal blood given with consent or taken from the young before they can refuse. If completed, it transfers a portion of the royal bloodline's power to the recipient, making Damien nearly unkillable," Matthew added. Eleanor processed this information. "Why would Damien betray you? I thought a beta's loyalty to their alpha was absolute." A bitter laugh escaped Matthew. "Damien and I grew up together. His mother was my father's mistress. We were raised as brothers, but when my father chose me as his successor, something broke in Damien. He never forgave either of us." "Politics," Abel said with distaste. "Always politics." Lucas cleared his throat. We have allies gathering, my king, warriors loyal to you, but we need time to organize a proper assault on the castle. Time we don't have, Matthew said. The ritual is in 2 days. Eleanor's mind raced. The forge song hummed faintly in her ears, an idea taking shape. I might be able to help, she said slowly. If I truly am what you call a songsmith, maybe I can forge weapons that would give us an advantage. Matthew turned to her, hope flickering in his eyes. You would do that for strangers. For a child, Eleanor corrected. No child deserves to be used as a sacrifice. Abel nodded approvingly. I have a forge here, smaller than what you're used to perhaps, but well equipped. You have a forge hidden in your home? Eleanor asked, surprised. The old man's eyes twinkled. I have many secrets, Eleanor Hayes, some of which might interest a songsmith like yourself. Lucas looked skeptical. We're putting our faith in untested magic in an Omega who didn't even know what she was until tonight. Watch your tone. Matthew warned, his alpha authority evident despite his weakened state. I wouldn't be alive without her intervention. Eleanor felt a strange warmth at his defense. Decades of being the pack's lowest member had conditioned her to accept disrespect without complaint. I don't need his faith, she told Matthew, only his patience while I work. Abel moved to a bookshelf, retrieving an ancient tome bound in what appeared to be silver wire. If you're to forge songsmith weapons, you'll need proper instruction. The old methods, the true songs. I don't know if I can, Eleanor admitted. I've never made anything more complex than horseshoes and farming tools. The metal sings to you, Abel reminded her. Trust that connection. It will guide your hands. A howl echoed in the distance, similar to the hunting call they'd heard earlier. Lucas moved to the window. Redwood scouts, he confirmed. They're searching the woods. Looking for me, Eleanor asked. Or for Matthew, Abel said. Either way, we can't stay here long. They'll eventually expand their search this far. I need to start forging immediately, Eleanor decided. How soon can you prepare the forge? It's always ready, Abel replied with a mysterious smile. I've been waiting a very long time for another songsmith to use it. As they prepared to move to the hidden forge at the back of Abel's home, Eleanor caught Matthew watching her with an unreadable expression. What? She asked defensively. You're not what I expected, Ma, he said quietly. A 56-year-old Omega blacksmith with gray hair and calloused hands, she replied with a hint of bitterness. Hardly the mate most Alpha Kings would dream of. Matthew shook his head. Age means nothing to our kind. We live for centuries, and I wasn't referring to your appearance. Then what? Most wolves would run from this fight. It's not your sister in danger, not your grandson. Yet you're ready to risk everything for strangers. Eleanor considered this. Perhaps I'm tired of running, of hiding what I am, of being less than I could be. A smile touched Matthew's lips. Then we have that in common. Abel's forge was like nothing Eleanor had ever seen. Hidden behind a false wall, the space opened into a cavern lit by strange blue flames. Tools of silver and iron hung on the walls, each inscribed with runes similar to those on the chains that had bound Matthew. This isn't just a forge, Eleanor whispered in awe. It's a sanctuary. The last of its kind, Abel confirmed, built by songsmiths centuries ago when our kind still lived openly. Our kind, Eleanor echoed. Abel rolled up his sleeve, revealing a faded tattoo of interlocking metallic circles. I was an apprentice when the purge began. Too weak in the gift to be considered dangerous. They left me alive while killing my masters. Eleanor felt a kinship with the old man that transcended their brief acquaintance. You've been hiding all these years. Surviving, he corrected, and preserving what knowledge I could. While Abel prepared the forge and Matthew conferred with Lucas about potential allies, Eleanor examined the tools. Each one sang to her in a different pitch, a different emotion. She selected a hammer that resonated with determination and protection. This one, she said simply. Abel nodded approvingly. The Hammer of Mercy, an excellent choice for your first songsmith creation. What should I make? Eleanor asked. Something that reflects your intent, Abel advised. The metal responds to purpose as much as skill. Eleanor thought of the young boy in danger of Matthew's desperation to save his family. Daggers, she decided, small enough to conceal, sharp enough to cut silver chains. As she worked, the metal sang louder than ever before. Eleanor lost track of time, lost in the rhythm of hammer on silver of heat and cooling water of runes forming under her fingers without conscious thought. Abel occasionally offered guidance, but mostly watched in respectful silence. Matthew entered the forge after several hours, his strength gradually returning. He stood transfixed as Eleanor worked the glowing metal, her hands moving with supernatural precision. "How is this possible?" he asked Abel quietly. "She's had no training." "The gift has been dormant, not absent," Abel replied. "Some songsmiths are born knowing the songs. Others must be taught." Eleanor falls somewhere in between, remembering what her blood already knows. Eleanor barely registered their conversation, too focused on the silver taking shape beneath her hammer. She was creating twin daggers, their blades etched with protection runes that would allow them to cut through enchanted metal without harming the wielder. When the first dagger was complete, she held it up. The blade caught the blue forge light and seemed to drink it in, glowing with inner power. "It's beautiful," Matthew said, approaching cautiously. "It's more than beautiful," Eleanor replied, feeling the dagger's song vibrate through her arm. "It's alive in its way. It wants to protect." Abel touched the blade reverently. "True songsmith work. I haven't seen its like in decades." Lucas entered the forge, his expression urgent. "Scouts are circling closer. We need to move soon." Eleanor nodded, returning to her work. "One more dagger, then we go." As she hammered the second blade into existence, a commotion erupted outside. Voices raised in alarm, the sound of running feet. "They've found us," Lucas said, drawing his sword. Abel moved with surprising speed for his age, grabbing a staff from the wall. "Finish the dagger," he instructed Eleanor. "We'll hold them off." Matthew straightened his alpha presence, filling the small forge. "I can fight." "You're still recovering," and Eleanor protested. "I've fought in worse condition," he countered. The door to Abel's home splintered. Lucas and Abel rushed to defend it, leaving Matthew and Eleanor in the forge. "Hurry," Matthew urged her. Eleanor poured every ounce of her concentration into the second dagger, her hands moving faster than she thought possible. The metal sang a battle hymn, now urgent and fierce. The sounds of fighting reached them moments later. Growls, the clash of metal bodies hitting walls. Matthew paced anxiously, clearly wanting to join the fray, but knowing he wasn't at full strength. "Done," Eleanor announced, lifting the second dagger. At that moment, William Redwood burst into the forge. The alpha of Eleanor's pack stood frozen in shock at the sight before him, his eyes moving from Eleanor to the glowing daggers in her hands. "You," he breathed. "I knew there was something wrong about you, but this—" Matthew moved protectively in front of Eleanor. "She's under my protection, Redwood." William's eyes narrowed. "Matthew Silvercrest. Damien said you were dead." "Damien lied," Matthew replied coldly, "as he's been lying to everyone." "Step aside," William commanded. "The woman belongs to my pack." Eleanor felt anger surge through her, decades of submission and belittlement crystallizing into resolve. "I belong to no one," she said, stepping out from behind Matthew. "And I never have." William's eyes widened at her defiance. "You don't understand what you are, what danger you're in." "I understand perfectly," Eleanor countered, the daggers humming in her hands. "I'm a songsmith, the very thing your alpha allies tried to exterminate years ago." "I protected you, Basu," William shouted, surprising them all. "When your mother was killed, I could have reported you. Could have told Theodore Silvercrest that another songsmith child lived. Instead, I hid you in plain sight. Made everyone believe you were weak, unremarkable." The revelation stunned Eleanor. "You knew my mother." Something like grief passed across William's face. "Marianne was my friend. She came to me when the purge began, begging for sanctuary. I gave it, but I couldn't save her when Theodore's hunters found her." Matthew's shock resonated through the mate bond. "My father's hunters killed her mother." "On his direct orders," William confirmed bitterly, "just like he ordered the death of every songsmith in North America." A new voice entered the conversation. "And now his son will finish what he started." Damien Blackthorne stood in the doorway, flanked by warriors. His amber eyes gleamed with triumph as they fixed on Matthew. "Hello, brother," he said with a cruel smile. "Welcome back from the dead." Time stood still in the forge as Damien Blackthorne's words echoed off the ancient walls. His amber eyes gleamed with malice, a stark contrast to Matthew's ice-blue gaze. The family resemblance between them was undeniable, though where Matthew carried his authority, with quiet strength, Damien wore his newfound power like an ill-fitting crown. "How did you find us?" William Redwood asked, his body tensing. Damien's smile widened. "You were careless, old friend. Your scouts reported directly to me." He turned his attention to Eleanor, his eyes narrowing. "So this is the Songsmith. Older than I expected." Eleanor gripped her newly forged daggers tighter, feeling them sing in response to her fear and determination. The metal was warm against her palms, almost comforting. "Step away from her," Matthew growled, his voice carrying the unmistakable command of an alpha. "You're in no position to give orders, brother," Damien replied. "Not when I hold your grandson and sister." Abel moved forward, his ancient eyes regarding Damien with something like pity. "I remember when you were a boy, Damien Blackthorn. Always in Matthew's shadow, always wanting what wasn't yours." Damien's smile faltered. "The old mentor speaks. I should have known you'd be involved, Abel. Still clinging to the past, I see." "Sometimes the past contains wisdom the present has forgotten," Abel replied. Tension crackled in the air like lightning before a storm. Eleanor sensed Matthew gathering his strength, preparing to attack despite his weakened state. She felt his intention through their bond and shifted slightly, ready to fight at his side. The moment broke when William Redwood made an unexpected move. Instead of attacking Matthew or Eleanor, he turned on Damien's warriors. "Run!" William shouted as he slammed into the nearest guard. Chaos erupted. Abel swung his staff with surprising agility, creating an opening. Matthew seized Eleanor's arm and pulled her toward a narrow passage at the back of the forge. "This way," Abel called, already disappearing into the darkness. They fled through the tunnel, the sounds of fighting fading behind them. The passageway twisted and turned clearly, designed to confuse pursuers. Eleanor ran blindly, guided only by Matthew's grip and the occasional instruction from Abel ahead. "Why did William help us?" Eleanor gasped as they ran. "Questions later," Matthew replied tersely. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a small clearing in the forest. Moonlight filtered through the trees, illuminating their path. Abel led them to an ancient oak with exposed roots, forming a natural hollow. "Inside," he instructed. "Quickly." They squeezed into the hidden space beneath the tree. Abel pressed his palm against the inner wall, whispering words in a language Eleanor didn't recognize. A soft blue light emanated from his hand, spreading across the earthen walls before fading. "A protection ward," Abel explained. "It will mask our presence for a while." Eleanor sank to the ground, her body trembling from exertion and adrenaline. The dagger still clutched in her hands pulsed with energy, responding to her elevated emotions. "What happened back there?" she asked. "Why would William Redwood help us escape?" Matthew sat beside her, his breathing labored. The silver poisoning still weakened him, though he fought to hide it. "William said he protected you," Matthew replied. "Perhaps he still is." Abel settled across from them, his aged face grave in the dim light filtering through the roots. "William Redwood has carried a heavy burden for many years, the guilt of surviving when others did not. He knew my mother," Eleanor said, the revelation still shocking. "He said he gave her sanctuary." "Many Pack Alphas were forced to make impossible choices during the Purge," Abel said. "Theodore Silvercrest demanded absolute loyalty. Those who refused were eliminated along with the Songsmiths." Matthew's jaw tightened. "My father's legacy grows more shameful with each revelation." "You are not your father," Eleanor said quietly. Their eyes met in the darkness, the mate bond humming between them. Matthew's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "We need a plan," he said after a moment. "Lucas is out there, possibly captured. My sister and grandson remain in Damien's control, and the blood bond ritual is scheduled for tomorrow night." "Your beta Lucas Reed had warriors gathering," Eleanor remembered. "Not enough to assault the castle directly," Matthew replied. "Damien will have fortified defenses, especially now that he knows I'm alive." Abel stroked his silver beard thoughtfully. "Perhaps a direct assault isn't necessary." "What do you mean?" Eleanor asked. "You are a songsmith," Abel said. "And not just any songsmith, but one with extraordinary natural talent. The daggers you created are proof of that." Eleanor looked down at the twin blades resting in her lap. They gleamed in the darkness, seeming to absorb what little light filtered into their hiding place. "These are just daggers," she said uncertainly. Abel shook his head. "They are more than metal. They are extensions of your will imbued with your purpose, and they can do more than cut physical chains. You're talking about the trial of fire, Matthew said suddenly. The ancient Songsmith ritual. Yes, Abel confirmed. Eleanor looked between them. What ritual? Abel's eyes took on a faraway look. In the old days when a songsmith came into their power, they underwent the trial of fire, a vision quest of sorts guided by their first creation. It allowed them to see beyond the physical world to glimpse potential futures and hidden truths. You want me to undergo this trial? Eleanor asked incredulously. Now when time is against us, time moves differently in the vision realm, Abel explained. What might seem hours, there could be minutes here, and the knowledge you gain could be crucial to saving Matthew's family. Matthew squeezed her hand. It's your choice, Eleanor. We can find another way. She studied his face, noting the worry lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Through their bond, she felt his fear for his grandson, a boy of only 10 years, a child in danger because of power struggles and ancient hatreds. How do I begin this trial? She asked Abel. Relief crossed the old man's features. Hold the daggers, one in each hand. Close your eyes and listen to their song. Let it guide you into the fire. Eleanor positioned herself more comfortably, crossing her legs and placing the daggers across her palms. Their metal sang louder now, an insistent melody that called to something deep within her. What should I look for in these visions? She asked. The path forward, Abel replied. The truth behind Damien's betrayal. The weakness in his plans. Eleanor closed her eyes. The daggers grew warmer in her hands, their song rising in volume and complexity. She focused on the melody, letting it fill her consciousness until nothing else existed. Fire bloomed behind her eyelids, not burning, but illuminating. She felt herself falling or perhaps rising into the flames. The vision took shape around her. Eleanor stood in Matthew's castle, but it was different, darker. Shadows clung to the corners and crept along the walls like living things. In the great hall, Damien sat upon a throne of twisted silver, a crown of thorns upon his head. At his feet knelt a boy no more than 10 with Matthew's ice-blue eyes. Lucas, Eleanor whispered, though no sound emerged from her lips. The boy looked up as if he had heard her. His small face was streaked with tears, but determination shone in his eyes. I won't help you, the child said to Damien. My grandfather will come for me. Damien laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally through the hall. Your grandfather is dead, boy, and soon you will give me what I need willingly. Never, Lucas declared. Damien's smile turned cruel. Bring in his aunt. Guards dragged in a woman Eleanor recognized from Matthew's memories as Cassandra Silvercrest. Unlike her nephew, Cassandra showed no fear, only cold hatred, as she glared at Damien. Still playing at being King Damien, she taunted. My brother will tear you apart for this. Your brother is dead, Damien repeated, and you, my dear, have a choice to make. Either you participate in the blood bond willingly, or I use the boy instead. Either way, I get what I want. The vision shifted, blurring and reforming. Eleanor now saw Damien as a young man standing in the shadow of Theodore Silvercrest. The resemblance between them was striking, though Theodore's eyes held none of the warmth Matthew's did. You are not my son, Theodore said coldly. You are the result of weakness, nothing more. Young Damien's face contorted with pain. I have served you loyally. I am stronger than Matthew, more dedicated to the pack. Matthew is my heir, Theodore replied dismissively. You are merely an instrument to be used when necessary. The scene changed again. Damien, older now, meeting in secret with a beautiful woman. He doesn't value you, the woman said, her hand caressing Damien's face. He never will, Damien. Not like I do. Alara, Damien whispered reverently. What would you have me do? Take what should be yours, she replied. Matthew doesn't deserve the throne. He doesn't deserve me. We were forced together for politics, but my heart has always belonged to you. Eleanor recognized the woman from Matthew's memories. Alara Winters, his former mate from the political marriage. The pieces began falling into place. The vision blurred once more, showing a series of rapid images. Damien plotting with Alara. The ambush that had left Matthew bound in silver chains. A hidden chamber beneath the castle where dark rituals were prepared. Then, most terrifying of all, Eleanor saw a possible future. Damien, his eyes glowing with unnatural power, standing over Matthew's broken body. Lucas and Cassandra dead at his feet. Abel impaled on a silver spear. and herself bound in chains, much like those that had imprisoned Matthew, being forced to forge weapons of destruction. No, Eleanor gasped, fighting to break free from the vision. One final scene appeared. An ancient book, its pages yellowed with age, open to a diagram of the blood bond ritual. Eleanor's vision zoomed in, revealing a crucial detail. The ritual required royal blood freely given or taken from the innocent, but it also required something else. The required royal blood had to be spilled by a weapon forged with love, not hatred. The vision released her abruptly. Eleanor gasped, her eyes flying open as she returned to the present. Matthew and Abel were staring at her with concern. She had no idea how much time had passed. "What did you see?" Matthew asked urgently. Eleanor's hands trembled as she lowered the daggers. "Everything. I saw everything." She described her visions, watching Matthew's face grow darker with each revelation. The truth about Alara and Damien's betrayal hit him particularly hard. "I knew our marriage was political," he said bitterly, "but I never suspected she harbored such hatred." "Hatred born of feeling trapped," Eleanor said, remembering the emotions she had sensed in the vision. "Much like Damien's hatred for your father." "And this ritual?" Abel asked. "You saw its weakness." Eleanor nodded. "The weapon used to draw the royal blood must be forged with love, not hatred or ambition. Damien doesn't know this. He plans to use a silver dagger created by a songsmith he hired and then killed. A weapon forged in betrayal and death," Abel mused. "It will corrupt the ritual." "Which might be worse than if it succeeded," Matthew pointed out. "Failed dark magic often has catastrophic consequences." "We need to get into the castle," Eleanor said decisively. "Stop the ritual before it begins." "Impossible," Matthew replied. "Damien will have doubled the guards after discovering I'm alive." Eleanor lifted the twin daggers. "These can cut more than physical chains, remember? They were forged with protection in mind, protection for your family." "You want to use them to break through the castle defenses?" Matthew asked skeptically. "No," Eleanor said, a plan forming in her mind. "I want to use them to see what can't be seen. The castle has secret passages, doesn't it? Escape routes known only to the royal family?" Matthew's eyes widened. "Yes, of course. Tunnels built centuries ago when the first Silvercrest claimed the territory." Abel nodded approvingly. "The daggers can guide you, show you the hidden paths, but it will require blood magic to activate such power." "My blood?" Eleanor asked. "Both of yours," Abel replied. "The mate bond, even incomplete, creates a powerful connection. Your blood combined with Matthew's could enhance the dagger's abilities tremendously." Matthew looked uncertain. "Blood magic has consequences." "So does doing nothing," Eleanor countered. Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. Matthew nodded slowly. "What do we need to do?" Abel instructed them to sit facing each other, knees touching. He placed one dagger across their joined hands. "A small cut, nothing more," he said. "Allow your blood to mingle on the blade." Eleanor used the second dagger to make a shallow cut across her palm. Matthew did the same. They pressed their bleeding hands together over the first dagger, allowing their mingled blood to coat the silver. The effect was immediate. The dagger began to glow with blue light, the same color as the forge fire. The second dagger, still in Eleanor's hand, responded similarly. "Now focus," Abel instructed. "Think of the castle, the secret passages, the path to Lucas and Cassandra." They concentrated together, their bonds strengthening the connection. In Eleanor's mind, a map began to form. Tunnels snaking beneath the forest floor, connecting Abel's territory to the castle grounds. Hidden entrances and forgotten chambers. "I can see it," she whispered. "The way in." "As can I," Matthew confirmed. Abel smiled. "The bond grows stronger. This is good." When they separated their hands, the cuts had already begun to heal faster than normal, even for werewolves. The daggers retained a faint glow, pulsing gently like heartbeats. "These will guide us now," Eleanor said, feeling the connection to the weapons grow stronger. "We should rest before attempting the journey," Abel advised. "The tunnels are treacherous, and we'll need our strength for what awaits at the castle." Matthew reluctantly agreed, though Eleanor felt his impatience through their bond. They arranged themselves as comfortably as possible in the small space, Matthew and Eleanor side by side, Abel keeping watch. "Why did you choose to help me?" Matthew asked softly as they settled down. "You could have walked away once we reached Abel's home. This isn't your fight." Eleanor considered the question. Perhaps it became my fight the moment I chose to free you from those chains. That doesn't explain why you made that choice in the first place, he pressed. She was silent for a moment, organizing her thoughts. All my life I've been told I'm weak, an omega barely worth acknowledging. I accepted that role because it was safer than standing out. And now I know that I've been hiding my true self, Eleanor said. Those chains around you were a physical manifestation of what I've done to myself. Breaking them was like breaking the limitations I accepted. Matthew's hand found hers in the darkness. For what it's worth, I see your strength clearly. Mace hasn't diminished it. If anything, your years have given your power depth that youth could never achieve. The compliment warmed Eleanor unexpectedly. She had spent so long being invisible that being truly seen was almost uncomfortable. Tell me about your grandson, she said, changing the subject. Matthew's voice softened. Lucas is remarkable. Born small, considered weak by pack standards, much like you were. But his mind is sharp, his heart enormous. He struggles with his wolf, can't fully transform yet, which makes him a target for ridicule. Yet you named him your heir. Because leadership isn't about physical strength, Matthew said firmly. It's about vision, compassion, the ability to see beyond tradition to what could be. Lucas has that in abundance. Eleanor heard the love in his voice, felt it through their bond. You're a different kind of alpha than your father was. I've spent my life trying to be, Matthew admitted. Theodore ruled through fear. I wanted to lead through respect. Is that why Damien resents you? Because you changed what it means to be Alpha King? Matthew sighed. Damien believes strength is everything, that mercy is weakness. He wanted to continue my father's legacy of dominance and control. When I began implementing changes more inclusive to Omegas, to humans who live in our territories, he saw it as destroying what made the Silvercrests powerful. Eleanor thought of the young Damien in her vision, desperate for Theodore's approval. He wanted to be like your father because he wanted to be acknowledged as Theodore's son. A recognition he never received, Matthew confirmed sadly. I tried to be a brother to him, but perhaps I never truly understood his pain. Their conversation drifted into silence. Eleanor felt exhaustion pulling at her, the events of the day catching up with her aging body. Despite the danger surrounding them, she felt oddly at peace with Matthew beside her. Rest, he murmured, sensing her fatigue. I'll wake you when it's time. She didn't intend to sleep, but her eyes grew heavy nonetheless. Just before consciousness slipped away, Eleanor felt Matthew's arm encircle her protectively, drawing her against his chest. She woke to Abel's gentle shaking. It's time, the old man whispered. Eleanor blinked away, sleep momentarily disoriented. Matthew was already awake, examining the glowing daggers with intense concentration. The castle will be most vulnerable at dawn, Abel explained. Guards changing shifts, night wolves tired, day wolves not fully alert. How far are we from the nearest tunnel entrance? Matthew asked. Abel pointed east. Half an hour's walk. The tunnel itself will take longer, perhaps 2 hours to reach the castle grounds. That still gives us time before the ritual, Eleanor noted. Damien scheduled it for sundown according to your vision. They emerged from their hiding place cautiously. The forest was quiet in the pre-dawn light mist clinging to the ground and winding between trees. Eleanor felt exposed after the safety of Abel's warded hollow, but the daggers in her hands gave her courage. They moved silently through the woods, Abel leading the way with surprising agility for his age. Matthew stayed close to Eleanor, his senses alert for any threat. The forest gradually thinned as they approached a small stream. There, Abel said, pointing to a weathered stone formation that looked entirely natural to the untrained eye. He pressed his palm against a specific stone, murmuring words similar to those he had used to activate the protection ward. The stone shifted, revealing a dark opening barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. I'll go first, Matthew said. No, Eleanor countered. The daggers should lead. They'll warn of any danger. Matthew clearly wanted to argue but recognized the logic of her suggestion. Stay close to me, he said instead. Eleanor nodded and ducked into the opening, the glowing daggers illuminating the narrow passage. Matthew followed immediately after her, with Abel bringing up the rear. The tunnel was ancient, its walls reinforced with roots and stones worn smooth by time. In places they had to crouch or crawl to continue forward. The air grew cooler the deeper they went, carrying the scent of damp earth and something older, more primal. These passages predate the Silvercrest reign. Abel explained softly as they walked. They were created by the original werewolf packs that settled this territory long before humans built their cities nearby. How do you know so much about our history? Matthew asked. Abel's smile was visible in the blue glow of the daggers. I am older than I look, Alpha King, and I have made it my life's work to preserve what others would forget. They continued in silence after that, conserving energy for the journey. The daggers guided them unerringly, glowing brighter at junctions to indicate the correct path. Eleanor felt their purpose through the metal, their determination to reach Lucas and Cassandra. After what seemed an eternity of darkness, the tunnel began to slope upward. The air changed, carrying hints of stone and metal rather than earth. They had reached the castle foundations. Be cautious now, Abel warned. There may be wards against intruders. As if summoned by his warning, the tunnel ahead began to shimmer with an eerie red light. Eleanor felt the daggers grow warmer in her hands, responding to the threat. Protection magic, Matthew said grimly, keyed to royal blood. Can you pass through it? Eleanor asked. Yes, but you and Abel cannot. Eleanor lifted the daggers. Perhaps we can. These were forged to break chains to protect your family. They carry your blood now as well as mine. Matthew looked uncertain. If it fails, the wards could injure you severely. We have no choice, Eleanor replied. Lucas needs all of us. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, holding the daggers before her like a shield. The red barrier flared brighter as she approached, pulsing with warning. The daggers responded, their blue glow intensifying until it nearly overwhelmed the red. Eleanor felt resistance as she reached the barrier, like pushing against a strong current. The daggers grew hot in her hands, almost painfully so, but she maintained her grip. Slowly, steadily, she pressed forward. The barrier wavered, then parted like curtains being drawn aside. Eleanor stepped through immediately, turning to ensure Matthew and Abel could follow. The opening remained, allowing them passage. Remarkable, Matthew breathed. The tunnel continued upward, eventually ending at what appeared to be a solid wall. Matthew approached this time, pressing his palm against the stone in a pattern only he knew. The wall slid aside silently, revealing a small chamber. My father's private study, Matthew whispered, or rather, the secret room behind it. They entered cautiously. The chamber was dusty and clearly unused for years, filled with ancient texts and artifacts Eleanor didn't recognize. A narrow door on the far wall presumably led to the study proper. Matthew pressed his ear against this door, listening intently. Empty, he reported after a moment. They slipped into the study, a grand room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk. Windows revealed the castle grounds outside, the sun now fully risen above the horizon. Where would Damien keep Lucas and Cassandra? Eleanor asked. Matthew's expression darkened. For the ritual, he'd want somewhere symbolic. The Great Hall, perhaps, or the ancestral chamber. Abel shook his head. The ritual requires specific preparations. A sacred circle, runic inscriptions. He would need privacy for that. Eleanor held up the daggers. These will lead us. As before, she concentrated on their purpose, on finding Lucas and Cassandra. The dagger's glow shifted, one pointing upward, the other down. They're separated, she realized. One above, one below. The north tower for Lucas, Matthew guessed, and the ritual chamber would be in the old dungeons. We should split up, Abel suggested. Matthew, you go after your grandson. Your scent will comfort him. Eleanor and I will find Cassandra and disrupt the ritual preparations. Matthew clearly disliked the idea of separating. It's too dangerous. More dangerous to leave either of them unrescued, Eleanor countered. The daggers will protect us. After a moment's hesitation, Matthew nodded. Be careful, he said, his eyes fixed on Eleanor. The mate bond will let me know if you're in danger. The same goes for you, she replied. Matthew surprised her by leaning forward and pressing his lips to hers, a brief but intense kiss that sent warmth flowing through the bond. For luck, he murmured. Then he was gone, slipping out of the study and into the castle proper. Abel raised an eyebrow. The bond grows stronger. Eleanor touched her lips, still feeling Matthew's kiss. Not now, Abel. The old man smiled knowingly, but said nothing more as they made their way toward the door. Eleanor clutched the dagger, pointing downward, letting it guide their path. The castle was surprisingly quiet as they navigated its corridors. Occasionally, they ducked into alcoves or empty rooms to avoid passing guards, but their progress remained steady. The dagger led them to a narrow staircase winding down into darkness. The old dungeons, Abel confirmed, used in Theodore's time for interrogations and worse. They descended cautiously, the temperature dropping with each step. Eleanor sensed the growing malevolence in the air, a darkness that had nothing to do with the lack of light. Something evil had happened in these depths, leaving a stain on the very stones. The staircase ended in a long corridor lined with cell doors. Most stood open, revealing empty chambers long abandoned. At the far end, however, a faint light spilled from beneath a heavy wooden door. Eleanor and Abel approached silently, the dagger now pulsing urgently in her hand. Voices became audible as they neared the door. "The circle is nearly complete," a male voice said. "Damien, we need only the final inscriptions and the sacrifice." "And the boy, and my mommy," a female voice asked. "Will you use him or me?" "That depends on you, Cassandra," Damien replied. "Your cooperation would make things simpler. The child will fight, making the ritual messier than necessary." Eleanor felt a surge of anger. She had expected to find Cassandra imprisoned, not conspiring with Damien. Her vision had shown this, but seeing it confirmed still shocked her. "She's working with him," Eleanor whispered to Abel. The old man nodded grimly. Family betrayal is an old story in the Silvercrest line, and they needed to see more before deciding how to proceed. Eleanor noticed a small grate in the wall near floor level, likely an air shaft for the underground chamber. She knelt and peered through. The room beyond was large and circular, its walls carved with ancient symbols. In the center, Damien and Cassandra stood within a partially completed ritual circle, drawn in what appeared to be blood. Silver braziers burned with a blue fire around the perimeter, casting eerie shadows. "I want guarantees, Damien," Cassandra was saying. "When this is done, Lucas remains unharmed. He may be Matthew's heir, but he's still my nephew." "The boy will be safe," Damien assured her. "Once I have the power of the blood bond, I won't need to harm him. He can be raised to serve the new order." Cassandra didn't look entirely convinced. "And my position? As we agreed, you'll be my Luna, second only to me in the Alliance. The Silvercrest bloodline continues through you, just not through Matthew's direct line." Eleanor pulled back from the grate, her mind racing. "Cassandra's betrayal isn't complete," she whispered to Abel. "She's trying to protect Lucas in her own way." "A dangerous game," Abel replied. "If the ritual succeeds, Damien will have no reason to keep his promises." They needed a plan. Eleanor studied the dagger in her hand, feeling its purpose shift subtly. No longer was it merely guiding them to Cassandra, now it seemed eager for confrontation. "We need a diversion," she decided. "Something to disrupt the ritual preparations without putting Cassandra or ourselves in immediate danger." Abel nodded toward the ceiling of the corridor. "Water pipes, the castle's old, but Theodore installed modern conveniences. If we could rupture one—" Eleanor understood immediately. She lifted the dagger, focusing her will on the pipes Abel had indicated. The Songsmith connection flowed through her into the metal above. She could feel the structure of the pipes, the pressure of water within them, the weak points in their construction. With a precise mental push, she created a hairline fracture in a joint directly above the ritual chamber's door. Water began to seep through, then spray, then gush as the crack widened under pressure. The effect was immediate. Shouting erupted from within the chamber as water poured through the ceiling. The heavy door flew open as Damien stormed out, looking for the source of the disaster. Eleanor and Abel pressed themselves into a shadowy alcove as Damien passed, cursing violently. The moment he was out of sight, they slipped into the ritual chamber. Cassandra stood alone in the center, soaked and confused, the blood circle around her washing away in the deluge. She spun toward them as they entered, her hands raising defensively. "Who are you?" she demanded, eyes narrowing as she took in Abel. "Wait, I know you. You're the old mentor my father banished." "Hello, Cassandra," Abel greeted her calmly. "It's been many years." Her gaze shifted to Eleanor, noting the glowing dagger. "A songsmith? Impossible." "Apparently not," Eleanor replied. "Your brother is alive, Cassandra. He's here in the castle rescuing Lucas as we speak." Shock registered on the younger woman's face. "Matthew is alive, but Damien said—" "Damien lied," Eleanor cut her off. "Just as he's lying about protecting Lucas after the ritual." Doubt flickered across Cassandra's features. "You don't understand. I'm doing this to protect our bloodline. Matthew's changes were weakening us. The other packs were beginning to question our strength. And you believe Damien will restore that strength?" Abel asked gently. The same Damien who betrayed his alpha, who would use a child in a blood ritual, Cassandra faltered. Eleanor sensed the conflict within her, the genuine belief that she was doing what was necessary, warring with doubt about Damien's true intentions. The ritual will fail, Eleanor told her bluntly. The weapon Damien plans to use was forged with hatred and betrayal. The blood bond requires a blade created with love and protection. How could you know this? Cassandra challenged. Eleanor held up the dagger. Because I've seen it. These daggers showed me the truth of the ritual, the consequences of failure. If Damien proceeds, everyone in this castle will die, including Lucas. Uncertainty clouded Cassandra's eyes. I never wanted Lucas harmed. I only wanted to matter, Eleanor finished for her. To be more than just Matthew's sister. I understand that feeling better than you know. A crash echoed from the corridor, followed by angry shouts. Damien was returning, and he wasn't alone. Choose now, Cassandra, Abel urged. Your brother or Damien? Your nephew's life or Damien's ambition? Cassandra took a deep breath, decision crystallizing in her eyes. Follow me, she said. There's another way out. We need to reach Matthew and Lucas before Damien realizes what's happening. She led them to a concealed door behind one of the braziers, pushing it open to reveal another narrow staircase. As they slipped through, Damien's voice echoed behind them, filled with rage as he discovered the ruined ritual site. He'll know I've betrayed him, Cassandra said as they climbed. There's no going back now. There never was, Bia replied. Only forward toward redemption or ruin. The staircase wound upward through the castle walls, eventually emerging in a corridor Eleanor didn't recognize. Cassandra oriented herself quickly. The North Tower is this way, she said. If Matthew went for Lucas, that's where we'll find them. They moved as quickly as stealth allowed, the dagger in Eleanor's hand growing warmer as they approached their destination. Through the mate bond, she sensed Matthew's presence growing stronger, along with his anxiety. Something's wrong, she murmured. Matthew's worried. They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a terrible scene. Matthew stood with his back to a wall. Young Lucas clutched protectively behind him. Facing them were William Redwood and 4 of his warriors blocking their escape. William, Eleanor called out, stepping forward. What are you doing? The Alpha turned, surprise registering on his face. Eleanor, you shouldn't be here. Neither should you, she replied. Why are you preventing Matthew from leaving with his grandson? William's expression hardened. Damien promised protection for my pack if I help secure the boy. The Silvercrests have ruled too long. It's time for change. And you believe Damien will honor that promise? Eleanor asked incredulously. The same Damien who betrayed his own Alpha, his own brother. Uncertainty flickered in William's eyes. I'm protecting my pack, just as I protected you all these years. By making me believe I was worthless, Eleanor challenged, anger rising. By hiding what I truly am. I kept you alive, William roared, when Theodore's hunters would have killed you like they killed your mother. Lucas peeked out from behind Matthew, his young face frightened but determined. Grandfather, he whispered, the lady has glowing knives. Matthew's eyes met Eleanor's across the corridor, relief flowing through their bond. She does, he confirmed to his grandson. And she's here to help us. William looked from Eleanor to the daggers in her hands, conflict evident on his face. I can't let you pass, Eleanor. Too much is at stake. Everything is at stake, she countered, including the life of an innocent child. The moment stretched, tension building in the narrow space. Then William made his decision. Stand down, he ordered his warriors, stepping aside. Let them pass. Alpha, one of the warriors questioned uncertainly. I said stand down, William repeated firmly. I've spent too many years living with one betrayal. I won't add another. Relief washed through Eleanor. Matthew immediately moved forward. Lucas held tightly against his side. Cassandra rushed to embrace her nephew. You came back, Lucas said to his aunt, confusion in his young eyes. I never should have left, Cassandra replied, tears streaming down her face. Can you forgive me? The boy studied her for a moment with wisdom beyond his years. Grandfather says mistakes only define us if we refuse to fix them. A smile broke through Cassandra's tears. Your grandfather is a wise man. Their reunion was cut short by the sound of running feet and angry shouts echoing up the stairwell. Damien had discovered their escape and was in pursuit. We need to move, Matthew urged. Is there another way out of the tower? William nodded. Follow me. The Alpha led them up rather than down, climbing spiral stairs to the tower's peak. Eleanor's aging legs protested the exertion, but she pushed through the discomfort. At the top, a small room opened onto a balcony overlooking the castle grounds. "There's no exit here," Cassandra protested. William pointed to a narrow ledge circling the tower. "That leads to the east wing. From there you can reach the stables." Matthew assessed the precarious path. "Lucas can make it. I'll carry him." The boy clung to his grandfather, face pale but determined. "I'm not scared." "Of course not," Matthew assured him. "You're a Silvercrest." Eleanor felt movement through the mate bond before she heard the door behind them crash open. Damien stood in the doorway, his amber eyes glowing with rage, flanked by warriors loyal to him. "Going somewhere, brother?" he snarled. Time seemed to crystallize in that moment on the tower. Damien stood framed in the doorway, his amber eyes burning with the intensity of betrayal and ambition. Behind him, his loyal warriors filled the stairwell, weapons drawn and ready. The late morning sun cast harsh shadows across his face, highlighting the features he shared with Matthew but twisting them into something darker. Eleanor instinctively moved in front of Lucas, the daggers in her hands pulsing with protective energy. She felt Matthew shift beside her, his body tensing for battle despite not being fully recovered from the silver poisoning. "You've lost Damien," Matthew said, his voice steady and commanding. "The ritual circle is destroyed. Cassandra stands with me. It's over." Damien's laugh was cold and sharp. "Nothing is over, brother. Not while I draw breath." His gaze shifted to William Redwood. "And you. Another betrayal to add to your collection." William straightened his spine. "I've spent decades living with one betrayal. I won't add the blood of a child to my conscience." "Noble sentiments," Damien sneered. "Too late to save you." He nodded to one of his warriors who raised a crossbow loaded with a silver bolt. Before anyone could react, the bolt flew, striking William in the shoulder. The Alpha staggered backward, a pained growl escaping his throat as silver poison immediately began spreading through his system. "William!" Eleanor cried, rushing to his side. Chaos erupted on the tower top. Matthew lunged at Damien while Cassandra pulled Lucas behind a stone pillar for protection. Abel raised his hands, ancient words flowing from his lips as he created a barrier between Damien's warriors and the rest of the group. Eleanor helped William to the floor. The Alpha's face contorted in pain as the silver burned through his veins. "I'm sorry," he gasped, grasping her wrist with surprising strength. "For everything. For hiding what you are. For making you feel less than you are." "Save your strength," Eleanor urged, examining the wound. The bolt had lodged deep, and the silver was already blackening the veins around the entry point. Behind her, the sounds of combat intensified. Matthew and Damien circled each other, their movements too fast for human eyes to track. They were evenly matched, both powerful alphas in their prime, though Matthew was still weakened from his earlier imprisonment. "Help Matthew," William urged. "I'm already done for." Eleanor shook her head. "No one else dies today." She focused on the silver bolt, reaching out with her Songsmith senses to feel its composition. Unlike the chains that had bound Matthew, this bolt was simple silver, deadly, but not enhanced with magic. She could work with this. Placing her hands on either side of the wound, Eleanor closed her eyes and concentrated. The silver sang to her, a high discordant note that spoke of pain and death. She countered it with her own melody, her will bending the metal to her command. Slowly, the bolt began to move, extracting itself from William's flesh without causing additional damage. The Alpha groaned but remained still, understanding what she was attempting. When the bolt finally pulled free, Eleanor cast it aside and placed her palm directly over the wound. "This will hurt," she warned, focusing on the silver particles still in his bloodstream. William nodded grimly. "Do it." Eleanor pulled not with her hands but with her mind, drawing the microscopic silver fragments toward the surface. William's back arched in agony, but he didn't cry out. Black lines appeared beneath his skin as the silver moved through his veins, gathering at the wound site. With one final effort, Eleanor extracted the remaining silver, the tiny particles coalescing into a small ball that fell to the floor with a soft ping. William collapsed back, his breathing labored but already more regular as his natural healing began to take effect. "How did you do that?" he asked weakly. "I'm a songsmith," Eleanor replied simply. "Metal answers to my call." A crash from across the tower drew her attention. Matthew had been thrown against the stone wall, momentarily stunned. Damien advanced on him, a silver dagger gleaming in his hand. The same dagger from Eleanor's vision, the one intended for the blood ritual. I should have killed you in the forest, Damien snarled. A mistake I won't repeat. Eleanor reacted without thinking. She raised one of her daggers and sent it flying with a thought guiding its path through the air with her will. The blade streaked across the space, striking Damien's hand and knocking his silver dagger away. Damien roared in pain and surprise, spinning toward Eleanor with hatred in his eyes. The Songsmith, he spat. Another relic that should have been exterminated long ago. Perhaps, Eleanor replied, rising to her feet. But then I've always been underestimated. She raised her remaining dagger, feeling its power pulse in harmony with her heartbeat. Damien tensed, preparing to attack when Abel's voice rang out from beside Lucas. Enough, Damien Blackthorn! The old man commanded, his voice, carrying a power Eleanor had never heard from him before. Abel stepped forward, his aged form suddenly seeming taller, more substantial. The air around him shimmered with energy. You forget who taught both you and Matthew when you were pups, Abel continued. You forget who I am. Damien hesitated in uncertainty, crossing his features for the first time. You're just an old man, Abel. A relic from the past, like her. Abel smiled, a cold expression that transformed his grandfatherly face into something ancient and formidable. The past holds power you've forgotten, young wolf. He raised his hands, and the blue fire from the braziers in the ritual chamber below suddenly erupted around them, forming a circle that separated Damien from his warriors. The flames didn't burn, but pulsed with a rhythm that matched Eleanor's heartbeat. The trial of fire, Abel announced. The ancient way of settling pact disputes. No weapons, no outside interference, just alpha against alpha. Matthew pushed himself to his feet, understanding dawning on his face. The old laws, winner takes all. This is absurd, Damien protested. I don't recognize these outdated customs. But you claim to honor tradition, Eleanor pointed out, to want to restore the old ways. Surely you won't reject a challenge that predates even the Silvercrest reign. She could see Damien calculating, weighing his options. His warriors couldn't cross the fire barrier Abel had created. Matthew was still weakened from the silver poisoning. In a direct physical confrontation, Damien held the advantage. Very well, he finally agreed, a confident smile spreading across his face. The trial of fire it is. When I kill you, brother, no one can question my right to rule. If you kill me, Matthew corrected quietly. The two wolves circled each other within the fire ring, their movements cautious and measured. Eleanor watched with her heart in her throat, feeling Matthew's determination through their bond, but also his physical weakness. He's still poisoned, she whispered to Abel. He's not at full strength. Abel nodded, his eyes never leaving the circling alphas, which is why he must use more than physical strength to win. The fight began without warning, Damien lunging forward with supernatural speed. Matthew evaded, narrowly countering with a strike that Damien blocked easily. They exchanged blows, testing each other's defenses, neither gaining a clear advantage. Eleanor could feel Matthew's strategy through their bond. He was conserving energy, letting Damien expend his in flashy attacks while looking for an opening. It was a dangerous game requiring perfect timing. Lucas watched the battle with wide, frightened eyes clutching Cassandra's hand. He'll win, right? The boy whispered. Grandfather will win. Your grandfather is the strongest man I know, Cassandra assured him, though uncertainty tinged her voice. The fight intensified, Damien growing frustrated with Matthew's defensive tactics. He launched a flurry of attacks, forcing Matthew to retreat closer to the fire barrier. A powerful kick caught Matthew in the chest, sending him staggering backward. Damien pressed his advantage, landing a punishing blow to Matthew's jaw that sent him to one knee. Blood trickled from the Alpha King's lip as he struggled to rise. Stay down, brother, Damien taunted. Accept defeat with dignity at least. Matthew spat blood onto the stone floor. You always did talk too much, Damien. With unexpected speed, he surged upward, catching Damien under the chin with his shoulder and sending the younger wolf stumbling backward. Matthew followed through, landing several quick strikes before Damien could recover his balance. But the effort cost him. Eleanor felt Matthew's strength flagging through their bond, his movements becoming slightly slower, his breathing more labored. The silver poisoning was taking its toll. Damien sensed the weakness and smiled, a predator scenting blood. You're dying on your feet, he observed. The silver is still in your system, isn't it? It's killing you slowly. Matthew didn't respond, conserving his energy for the fight. Damien began circling again, toying with his prey now. "I want you to know something before you die," Damien said conversationally. "Alara never loved you, not for a single day. She was mine from the beginning, even before your political marriage." Pain flashed across Matthew's face, not physical, but emotional. Eleanor felt it through their bond, a deep wound reopened. "That's right," Damien continued, pressing his psychological advantage. "Every night you spent with her, every intimate moment, she was thinking of me, imagining it was me touching her, not you." Matthew's concentration wavered, and Damien struck like lightning, a devastating combination that left Matthew reeling. Blood flowed freely from a cut above his eye, partially blinding him. Eleanor couldn't bear to watch passively any longer. She reached for her remaining dagger, but Abel caught her wrist. "You cannot interfere," he warned. "The trial must proceed without outside influence." "He's going to die," Eleanor whispered desperately. Abel's eyes held ancient wisdom, then strengthened him another way. Eleanor understood immediately. The mate bond. Though incomplete, it still connected them, allowing emotions and energy to flow between them. She closed her eyes, focusing on their bond, on the golden thread that linked her soul to Matthew's. She poured everything into that connection: strength, courage, determination. Her belief in him, her admiration for his compassion and leadership. Most significantly, she offered him her love, not the mate bond's automatic connection, but her genuine feelings that had grown in their short time together. Matthew staggered again under another of Damien's blows, then suddenly straightened as Eleanor's emotions and energy flowed into him. His eyes sought hers across the tower top, ice blue, meeting green in a moment of perfect understanding. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. When Damien attacked again, Matthew was ready. He moved with renewed purpose, his technique shifting from purely defensive to a calculated offensive. Rather than matching Damien's raw power, he used the younger wolf's momentum against him, redirecting attacks and conserving his own energy. "What's happening?" Lucas whispered, sensing the change in the battle's tone. "Your grandfather is fighting smart, not hard," Cassandra explained, hope entering her voice. Damien grew increasingly frustrated as his attacks failed to land with their previous effectiveness. His movements became more aggressive but less controlled, leaving openings that Matthew expertly exploited. "Fight me properly," Damien demanded after Matthew evaded yet another powerful but predictable attack. "I am fighting," Matthew replied calmly. "I'm just not fighting like our father taught us." The mention of Theodore Silvercrest triggered Damien's rage. With a roar, he launched himself at Matthew, abandoning technique for pure aggression. It was exactly what Matthew had been waiting for. Sidestepping the charge, Matthew caught Damien's extended arm and used the momentum to slam him into the stone floor. Before Damien could recover, Matthew was on him, pinning him with a knee across the throat. "Yield," Matthew demanded. Damien struggled, his face contorting with hatred. "Never." Matthew increased the pressure, slightly cutting off Damien's air. "Yield, and you live. Continue, and this ends now." For a moment, it seemed Damien would choose death over surrender. Then, with resentment burning in his eyes, he tapped the stone floor twice, the traditional signal of submission in the trial of fire. Matthew released him immediately, stepping back, but remaining vigilant. "It's over, Damien. By the old laws, by the trial of fire, the challenge is settled. The pack is mine." Abel lowered the fire barrier, allowing Cassandra and Lucas to rush to Matthew's side. The boy threw himself into his grandfather's arms while Cassandra supported Matthew's wounded frame. Damien's warriors looked uncertain, their loyalty now in question following their leader's defeat. Abel addressed them directly. "The trial has concluded according to ancient law," the old man proclaimed. "Matthew Silvercrest remains Alpha King of the Northern Alliance. Those who accept this judgment may stay. Those who cannot must leave these territories immediately." One by one, the warriors lowered their weapons, some kneeling in renewed allegiance to Matthew. Only two remained standing, their expressions defiant. "Go," Matthew told them, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "Find packs that share your values. There is no place for you here any longer." The dissidents departed without another word, disappearing down the tower stairs. Damien remained on his knees, defeat written in every line of his body. "What about him?" William asked, having recovered enough to sit up, though his wounds still bled sluggishly. Matthew regarded his half-brother with a mixture of sadness and resolution. "Traditional punishment for challenging the Alpha is death." Damien raised his chin, preparing to meet his fate with what dignity he could muster. But Matthew continued, "Our traditions have failed us in many ways. Perhaps it's time for a different approach." Eleanor moved to Matthew's side, their shoulders touching lightly. "What are you thinking?" Matthew turned to her, their bond carrying his troubled thoughts. Death would be simple, but it solves nothing. The hatred, the division he created would continue. "Then find a punishment that addresses the true crime," Eleanor suggested. Matthew considered this, then nodded. He turned back to Damien. "Your crime wasn't challenging me. It was betrayal of pact bonds, of family, of trust. You used your position to harm those you swore to protect." Damien said nothing, his amber eyes burning with suppressed rage. "Therefore your punishment is to live without what you abused," Matthew declared. "Eleanor." She understood immediately what he was asking. Stepping forward, Eleanor approached Damien, the Songsmith dagger gleaming in her hand. "This will hurt," she warned him, echoing the words she had spoken to William earlier. "But unlike you, I take no pleasure in causing pain." Before Damien could react, she pressed the dagger against his chest directly over his heart, not piercing the skin, but making contact. She closed her eyes, reaching with her Songsmith senses into Damien's very being. Every werewolf carried their wolf as part of their soul, their essence. It was what made them shifters, what gave them their strength and abilities. Eleanor followed the metal trace elements in Damien's blood, using them as a conduit to reach that essential part of him. Damien screamed as she worked, his back arching in agony. The process wasn't physical, but spiritual, a separation of what had always been united. When Eleanor finally stepped back, Damien collapsed to the floor, panting. "What did you do to me?" he gasped, genuine fear in his eyes for the first time. "I took what you valued most," Eleanor replied quietly. "Your wolf. You are human now, Damien Blackthorne. You will live a human lifespan with human limitations. You will remember what it was to be more, but never experience it again." Horror dawned on Damien's face as he realized the full extent of his punishment. To a born werewolf, losing the ability to shift was worse than death, a living half-existence. "You can't do this," he whispered. "It's done," Eleanor confirmed. Matthew stepped forward. "You will leave these territories and never return. You will live among humans as a human. Perhaps in time you'll gain a perspective your ambition never allowed." Damien's face contorted with hatred. "I will find a way back. I will find a way to restore what she took." "No," Abel said with certainty. "What a songsmith takes cannot be restored by any power known to our kind." Two of Matthew's loyal warriors stepped forward to escort the defeated Damien from the tower. As they led him away, he cast one final look of pure venom toward Eleanor and Matthew. "This isn't over," he promised. "Not while I draw breath." When he was gone, the tension in the tower dissipated like morning mist under the sun. Matthew sagged slightly, the toll of battle and lingering silver poisoning catching up to him. Eleanor supported him immediately, their bond humming with shared relief and exhaustion. "Grandfather," Lucas cried in alarm. "I'm all right," Matthew assured the boy, ruffling his hair with his free hand. "Just tired." "The silver is still in your system," Eleanor observed. "I need to draw it out as I did for William." Abel nodded in agreement. "We should move to more comfortable quarters. The tower is no place for healing work." With Cassandra leading the way and William following more slowly due to his injury, they made their way down the tower stairs and into the main castle. Guards and servants stared in shock at the procession. Matthew, bloodied but victorious, Eleanor supporting him with the glowing dagger still in her hand, Abel walking with renewed vigor, and young Lucas practically bouncing with relief. They settled in Matthew's private chambers, an expansive suite with a view of the mountain range beyond the castle grounds. Eleanor immediately set to work extracting the remaining silver from Matthew's system, a delicate process that required all her concentration. "This may be even more painful than what William experienced," she warned as Matthew sat on the edge of his bed. "The silver has been in your system longer, integrating with your tissues." Matthew nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I trust you." Those simple words warmed Eleanor more than any declaration of love could have. She placed her hands on either side of his face, calling to the metal that poisoned him. Matthew's body tensed as the silver began to move, gathering from various points throughout his system. Veins darkened visibly beneath his skin as the particles traveled toward Eleanor's hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he made no sound, enduring the agony with stoic determination. When the silver finally emerged, it formed a small sphere, hovering between Eleanor's palms, larger than what she had extracted from William. With a gesture, she sent it to join her dagger, the metals fusing together as if eager to reunite. Matthew exhaled deeply as the pain subsided. "Thank you," he said, his color already improving as his accelerated healing began working properly again. Lucas approached cautiously. "Are you better now, grandfather?" Matthew smiled, holding out his arms for the boy. "Much better, thanks to Eleanor." Lucas studied Eleanor with curious eyes. "The metal listens to you," he observed, "like it's alive." "In a way it is," Eleanor replied, unexpectedly touched by the child's perception. "All things have songs if you know how to listen." Abel joined them, looking satisfied with the day's outcome, but also contemplative. "We have much to discuss," he said to Matthew. "The pack will need reassurance after today's events." Matthew nodded. "Gather the pack council in the Great Hall in 1 hour. It's time they learn the truth about everything: Theodore's purge of the Songsmiths, Damien's betrayal, and the changes we must make moving forward." Cassandra stepped forward hesitantly. "In my role in this, I betrayed you too, Matthew." Matthew regarded his sister with complicated emotions playing across his face. "Why, Cass? We've had our disagreements, but I never thought you'd side with Damien against me." Cassandra looked away, shame evident in her posture. "I believed you were weakening the pack with your reforms. Elevating Omegas, creating alliances with humans. Father would have never approved." "Father was wrong about many things," Matthew replied quietly. "I see that now," Cassandra admitted. "Watching you fight today, not with brute strength, but with intelligence and restraint. Seeing how loyal people are to you, not out of fear, but respect. I was blind, brother, blinded by old prejudices and Damien's manipulations." Matthew was silent for a long moment. "Your betrayal hurt deeply, Cass, but you chose to help us in the end. That counts for something." "What will you do with me?" she asked, her voice small. Matthew looked to Eleanor, seeking her input through their bond. She sensed his conflict, the hurt warring with his natural inclination toward forgiveness. "Second chances are precious things," Eleanor said. "Not everyone deserves them, but sometimes the truest strength is in offering them anyway." Matthew smiled, slightly appreciating her wisdom. "You will remain part of this family, Cassandra, but trust is earned. It will take time to rebuild what was broken today." Relief washed over Cassandra's face. "Thank you, brother. I won't disappoint you again." William Redwood, who had been silent since their arrival in the chambers, finally spoke up. "And what of me, Alpha King? I too played a role in today's events." Matthew considered the older Alpha. "You made the right choice in the end, William. That matters." "I have much to atone for," William said, his eyes meeting Eleanor's. "Decades of lies, of making you believe you were less than you are." Eleanor felt the weight of their shared history, the years she had spent feeling broken and insufficient. "Why did you do it? Truly, was it just to protect me from Theodore's hunters?" William sighed heavily. "At first, yes. Your mother, Mary Ann, was my friend, my packmate. When she came to me, desperate and pregnant, I couldn't turn her away. After she was killed, I knew I had to hide what you were. The safest way was to convince everyone, including you, that you were just an unremarkable Omega. But even after Theodore died," Eleanor pressed, "for years afterward you maintained the deception." "By then the lie had become comfortable," William admitted, "and selfishly I wanted to keep you in my pack. If you had discovered your true nature, you would have left, found others like yourself." "There were no others," Abel pointed out. "The Songsmiths were all but extinct." "I didn't know that," William replied. "I only knew I had promised Mary Ann to keep her daughter safe. In my limited understanding, that meant keeping Eleanor hidden, unremarkable, overlooked." Eleanor absorbed this, decades of feelings difficult to reconcile in a single conversation. "I spent my life believing I was worthless," she said finally. "That takes more than words to heal." William nodded in understanding. "I don't expect forgiveness, Eleanor. Only the chance to make amends in whatever way I can." Matthew addressed the Redwood Alpha formally. "Return to your territory, William. Care for your pack. When the Alliance Council meets next month, we will discuss new terms for all territories, including greater protections for Omegas and those with special abilities." William bowed his head in acknowledgement. "Thank you, Alpha King." As the day progressed, the castle settled into a new rhythm. News of Matthew's victory and Damien's punishment spread quickly. Pack members, who had hidden their loyalty during Damien's brief coup, emerged pledging themselves anew to their rightful alpha. By evening, Eleanor found herself standing on a balcony overlooking the castle grounds, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. The events of the past few days seemed almost dreamlike in their intensity. "Penny for your thoughts," Matthew said, joining her at the railing. Eleanor smiled. "They're worth at least $1 inflation being what it is." Matthew laughed, the sound warming her heart. He looked better already, his body's accelerated healing having repaired most of the damage from the fight. He stood closer than necessary, their shoulders touching lightly. "The council meeting went well," he informed her. "Better than expected, actually. Many were relieved to see Damien gone. His faction was smaller than we realized. In the revelation about the Songsmiths about me. Surprise, certainly. Some fear." Matthew shrugged. "Change is never easy, especially for our kind. We live so long that we become set in our ways." Eleanor nodded understanding. "And Lucas? How is he processing everything?" Matthew's expression softened. "Children adapt more easily than adults. He's already pestering Abel with questions about Songsmiths and whether he might have inherited any abilities." "Has he?" "Abel thinks it's possible. Not the full Songsmith gift, but perhaps an affinity for metal. Time will tell." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the mountains. Eleanor felt content in a way she hadn't experienced in decades, perhaps ever. The mate bond hummed between them, warm and reassuring. "What happens now?" she asked finally. Matthew turned to face her fully. "That depends largely on you, Eleanor Hayes." "On me." "The mate bond remains incomplete," he reminded her. "I would never presume to force its completion. It must be your choice freely made." Eleanor studied his face in the fading light. This powerful alpha, this king waiting on her decision with respect and patience. Through their bond, she felt his affection, his admiration, but also his uncertainty. He truly believed she might refuse. "Why would I refuse?" she asked softly. "Because of our age difference, because of our different statuses, because of my family's history," Matthew replied honestly. "My father ordered the purge that killed your mother. The Silvercrest legacy is stained with the blood of your people." Eleanor reached up to touch his face, her palm against his cheek. "You are not your father, Matthew. You've spent your life trying to be different, to be better. I've seen it in your actions, felt it through our bond. And that's enough." "More than enough," Eleanor confirmed. "Besides, at our age, holding grudges seems like a waste of precious time." Matthew smiled, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Wise words." "I have my moments," she replied with a smile of her own. "Now, are you going to complete this bond, or do I need to take matters into my own hands?" Matthew laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Then his expression grew serious, tender. "Are you certain, Eleanor? Once done, this cannot be undone." In answer, Eleanor tilted her head, exposing the side of her neck. "I've never been more certain of anything." Matthew's eyes darkened with emotion. He leaned forward, his lips finding the sensitive spot where neck met shoulder. Eleanor felt his hesitation, his desire to be gentle warring with the primal need of the mate bond. "Don't hold back," she whispered. "I'm stronger than I look." His teeth sank into her flesh, sharp and claiming. Pain flashed briefly, immediately transformed into something else entirely. The mate bond exploded between them, going from a gentle hum to a roaring symphony. Eleanor gasped as emotions and sensations flooded through her. Matthew's joy, his relief, his absolute certainty that she was his and he was hers. When he pulled back, blood stained his lips. The mark throbbed on her neck, but already she could feel it beginning to heal into a permanent scar, proof of their connection. "Mine," Matthew said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yours," Eleanor agreed, "and you are mine." 6 months passed in what felt like moments. Spring came to the mountains, bringing renewal to more than just the landscape. Under Matthew's leadership, the Northern Alliance began implementing changes that would have been unthinkable in Theodore's time. Omegas were given representation on the Pack Council. Humans living in Alliance territories received greater protections and recognition. Most significantly, Eleanor established the Songsmith Academy, a place where those with metal affinity could learn to develop their gifts without fear. To everyone's surprise, they discovered 5 songsmiths living in hiding throughout the territories. Some, like Eleanor, had suppressed their abilities for decades. Others had developed limited skills in secret, never understanding the full extent of their potential. The oldest was Bernard, a 78-year-old blacksmith who had been masquerading as a simple craftsman for over 50 years. The youngest was a girl of 16 who wept with relief when Eleanor explained she wasn't cursed or crazy for hearing metal sing. Lucas, true to Abel's prediction, showed signs of metal affinity. Not the full Songsmith ability, but enough to make small objects move with concentration. Matthew beamed with pride at his grandson's developing talents, further evidence that the boy would one day make an exceptional Alpha King. Eleanor stood in the academy forge watching as Bernard guided Lucas through a simple exercise, teaching him to feel the metal structure. The boy's face was screwed up in concentration, his small hands hovering over a silver coin. "He's doing well," Matthew observed, entering the forge and wrapping his arms around Eleanor from behind. She leaned back against his chest, smiling. "He has a natural talent and an excellent teacher in Bernard." "And in you," Matthew reminded her. "Don't sell yourself short." Eleanor chuckled. "Old habits die hard, but I'm learning." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by Abel, who entered the forge with an expression of controlled excitement. "I found something," the old man announced without preamble. "In the archives hidden behind a false wall. Theodore tried to destroy all records of the Songsmiths, but he missed this." He held out an ancient leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. Eleanor took it carefully, feeling the metal clasps respond to her touch, warming slightly. "A Songsmith grimoire," Abel explained. "One of the original teaching texts thought lost centuries ago." Eleanor opened the book reverently, her eyes widening as she scanned the first page. "This changes everything," she whispered. "The techniques described here, we never imagined such possibilities." Matthew looked over her shoulder, unable to fully appreciate the technical aspects but understanding the significance. "This belongs to you and your students," he said. "Another piece of your heritage reclaimed." Eleanor closed the book, emotion tightening her throat. 6 months ago, she had been alone, believing herself broken and worthless. Now she stood surrounded by family, by purpose, by a legacy reborn. "Are you happy?" Matthew asked softly, sensing her emotional state through their bond. Eleanor turned in his embrace, meeting his ice-blue eyes with absolute certainty. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Outside the forge, Lucas finally succeeded in making the coin roll across the table without touching it. His delighted laugh carried to them a sound of pure joy. "You freed more than yourself when you broke those silver chains," Matthew murmured, pressing his forehead against hers. "You freed all of us from the past." "No more chains," Eleanor agreed. "Only possibilities." As if in response, the metals in the forge began to sing a gentle harmony that only Eleanor could hear. Not a song of restraint and imprisonment, but one of creation and potential. A reminder that even the strongest chains could be broken and that it was never too late to forge something new.